this time zone. Okay, so we're going to started. Hi, Chris.
Yeah, hi, Hassan.
All right, so who is Chris?
Uh, yeah, my name is Chris Adolphus. A product designer. Yeah, that's pretty much it about me. I design digital products. Yeah.
Chris, there are other
Um,
interesting things. Why you not telling us other interesting things as well?
I have a section about me in my slides, so I don't want to spoil the whole vibe. You get the gist. Like I want it to come as a surprise.
Okay, okay. You can get started, Sha.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name is Chris Adolphus. I'm really excited to be here and to be speaking with everybody. Yeah, today we're going to be talking about localization in UX and product design, and I try to also, touch on more topics that relating to localization in UX and product design. Um, yeah, so first things first, I have to talk about myself. You need to learn more about me, and you should be listening to me. Yeah, so about me, in 2 words, I'm the revelation. I like to refer to myself as the revelation. On my tweet, I think my name is a god. Yeah, I'm super cool. I know. Um, yeah, um, you know, outside that, so people tend to ask me all the time, like, Chris, what do you do for a living? Like, who are you? Some people, an investor like Sabinus. So other people, a football player like Cristiano Ronaldo. Most times I can be a comedian, like Chris. I have aspirations to be an astronaut. I want to be a scientist. I want to be a motivational speaker. I want to be everything. So this is like, everything about me. But for the meantime, I'm designing product too, you know, because I enjoy, designing digital products. Yeah, what we're going to be discussing today. So I'm trying to time myself also. What we're going to be discussing today. Yeah, let's just go with your flow. Like I said, yeah, you just have to trust me and work with me. So our conversation today is, centered around localization in UX and product design. But I want to start from the foundation. And the foundation is, starts from this point, which is the guilt. And what guilt really means is globalization, internationalization, localization, and translation. Yeah, I just have their short codes just with them, and yeah, this is like honestly the uh how do I put this? Uh, the this is like the funniest like funny thing you're going to learn today, which is how they came about these abbreviations in case you don't know them yet. So G11N just means the number of characters between the G and the N, which is Obalizatio. That's like 11 characters, and that's how they got the name, GLN. Same goes for internationalization, which is pretty much the distance again between the I and the N. You have 18 characters, and they just spread it out there. I don't know why they did this, but they felt like this, made a whole lot of sense to them, and yeah, we have to stick with them. They're the founding fathers of design. Yeah, diving into it. So let's start from the basics, from the very foundation of things, which is globalization. And talking about globalization, I know that we've heard this term, so many times, which is starts local but think global. Start from Nigeria, but you should have a global mindset of expanding to other markets and stuff like that. And then what is globalization? So globalization is just is when a company. So is anyone asking me any questions yet? Uh, I don't think so. But, uh,
Definitely would. I don't know, but I guess they should. It was like now, baby, the two.
hello, is anyone asking me any questions?
Please go on.
Yeah, thank you. So what is globalization? Globalization is what companies need to do to reach the global markets. Talking about how we're in the global village, where your products can be accessed from anywhere in the world. So globalization just means it's just like this whole grandfather of everything that just covers both internationalization, localization, and translation. Uh, so what I mean is that globalization, in terms of when it comes to digital product and startup and tech in general, globalization goes beyond it goes beyond the product. Yeah, globalization goes beyond the product. It's transition. It goes from the product down to compliance to the the people's team and everybody involved in the company, from top to bottom. And in most times you join global companies and then you hear that they have teams like globalization teams. So what this team does basically is just to ensure that the business and the company can reach the global market. They are pretty much in charge of leading the localization, internationalization, translation activities within this company. Yeah, so again, as I stated, which is globalization is really not product specific. It is company specific, and it's a company wide duty that involves every department: compliance, legal, HR, people's team, product team, engineering team. Wherever team within the company is involved in the entire globalization process. And that's why most times when company come, they tell we're starting locally, but our mindset is actually global. Moving on from globalization and going into internationalization. This is awfully long. So in one word, I see internationalization as generalist approach to adapting products to different markets. So what do I mean by this? I just mean that when it comes to when you talk about internationalization, you don't specifically look at one particular market. You are looking at how can people all over the world access our products in the meantime. We're not going neck deep into a particular market, into a particular country or or demography of users or people. We want to just make sure that our product is easy to access wherever people are in the world. So with internationalization, it's the process of creating this product or an application to support different languages, currencies, conventions, and other things like that. So like I stated here, make your product adaptable to the international market. This is pretty much what internationalization is all about. This majorly revolves around language, writing formats and different currencies. So how do I ensure that I can switch the language from English to Spanish or to Latin? Something else is that internationalization, as opposed to globalization, is not company-wide. It is product-specific. That particular product, how do people within different countries, different languages access this product, even though we are not fully operational in their country. And then I have two examples here. One which is to the right, I have an app screen, one in English and the other one in Arabic. So with internationalization, you want to ensure that you eliminate as much as possible any language barrier. You want to ensure that when users in Saudi Arabia or people who use people whose language is Arabic are able to make use of this your product, and this your product is able to move the lettering and the writing of the content of your pages is able to move from left to right. It's able to adapt itself without having so much how do I put this? So much issues when it comes to translation. Like I said again, it's language specific. How do people in different countries access this product, even if we're not fully operational in their country? And that's why I term this, a generalist approach to adapting your products to the global market or to different markets. So next I'm going to touch on is translation. So translation again is just pretty much written text. There's not too much to say about translation. It's like it's here already, which is making sure that every text is convertible from one language to another. This is all part of the entire globalization process, where you are able to ensure that either making use of computer translation or human translation, but the goal is to ensure that every text is able to be converted from one language to another, irrespective of who is accessing your product and from which country they're accessing your product. Yeah, localization is like it's not the sweetest part of adapting to new markets. And like I said there, which is the bitter truth is you won't have problems with localization if you don't do localization. That's the truth. If you don't want to expand to new markets, you won't have this. You won't have the whole headache of trying to adapt a product to new markets. So what is localization to me? In my experience and in my own understanding, localization is just a specialist approach to adapting products to market, to new markets. What I mean is that as opposed to looking at all the countries and every country I want to focus on just one small country. I want to focus on just one small market within a country and understand how my product is able to scale into this country effectively and in a promising way. Like expanding to new market, to be honest, is quite challenging. It's quite it's full of uncertainties. You don't know how the market is going to accept your product. So you want to be able to ensure that you localize your product to the point where it feels natural and local to the locales of the environment. Well, I just said locals in a very, very nice way. So localization for me is the process of adapting your product to a particular locale. Said it again. Moving on. So making your product adaptable to specific market. This consists of language, visual design, UX writing, imagery, use of assets. You want to ensure that everything that involves UI, UX of a particular product is properly adapted to the particular market that you're expanding to, and you want to gain full ground, in. So what's the difference between so I use the code this time. I18 is internationalization, L10N is localization. So for me, the major difference is that when it comes to internationalization, I'm not specific about a market. It's pretty much about I want to ensure that people within other countries are able to access my product, and there is no language barrier. There is no language barrier. By language barrier, I mean that someone who is in the UK is able to use my product, and my product is able to, and the writing, the writing, the text, the content, the currency is able to switch to adapt to that person's country. And then someone who is also Arabic is able to open an application and still make use of this application in a way that it is adapted to that Arabic language where it's written from right to left. So this is the whole process of internationalization. And when it comes to localization is taking this it's taking internationalization process a step further by making sure that I go beyond just making it possible to access my product. I go deeper into ensuring that people in different culture that I'm expanding to are able to experience my product like it's a part of their culture, like it's a part of them, and it's not some foreign product. So like I have in my slide when it comes to localization. So I got this image from I forgot it. But yeah, content localization is very, very critical where your content is adapted to a particular market that you're expanding to. Outside content localization, you also want to focus on UX design. Like I said earlier, your UX writing, your your error messages, your buttons, everything, your use of image should be adapted to that culture. Everything comes within the culture of the people that are building this particular product that they are entering their market. You want to be able to ensure that your product adapts into their market. And in my experience, how big companies and organizations solve localization issue, because to be honest, there's certain constraints when it comes to localization. What I've seen is that most of these huge companies, they solve localization problem through acquisition and mergers. What they do is that they just look for a particular company. They just look for a company within the same space that is already operating in the market. And what they do is that they acquire that company, integrate them into their company, and that company is pretty much the face of their product in that particular market that they're looking to expand to. So by doing this, they they save themselves the stress, the time, and the human resource to start, going into that particular market and trying to expand into that market. And now, most of us, work with startups that can't afford to do this. So what do we do when we want to localize our products? Three things before localization that you should ensure doing is, you want to understand the market, you want to understand the people, and you want to understand their culture. By understanding their markets, what I mean is that you want to be able to apply UX principles. You want to be able to learn more about how the current players serve them, serve this market, what the current players are doing in the market that is efficient and working for them. You want to also, you want to learn, about the UI UX conventions, and you want to be able to understand that, use of typography, use of image, and other digital assets that is favorable, that this market, really, really favors. Outside this, you want to research the people. So by researching the people, what I mean is that you want to be able to learn more about, how they react to similar products in the past. You want to know how the users, how they react to this particular solution. People who are players in the market, how have these people accepted their product, the issues they are facing, the pain points they are currently having, and how to better, solve this problem. Because to be honest, when it comes to localization, every market is unique in its own way. The particular problem that people making use of a particular product in a particular niche market is very, very different from the other niche market. I want to be able to understand how these people, have been accommodating similar products and how they react to similar products. And then the last thing you want to do is I want to research the culture. Now, by culture, this goes beyond just the market and the people. It goes into, you want to look at how people in that area, behave in terms of, you want to look at the government. You wouldn't want to give the product and make use of a slang that gets your products banned in a particular country. You don't want to expand your product to China, and then you make use of a slang that makes the Chinese government to ban your product. So you want to be able to so you don't want to use offensive assets, you don't want to use offensive slangs, you don't want to use offensive colors, offensive languages to pass. You want to adapt all these things and change them to suit the particular market that you're moving your product into. So when you're working on your UX design, on your flows, on your wireframes and everything else, you have to understand that you need to factor in culture in terms of slangs. The sort of slang you use in Lagos for Nigerians is very different from the kind of slang you want to use for people in, well, what country should I mention? For people living in South Africa, there are different slangs that people within different local are very, very conversant with, that that speaks to their emotions. And you want to be able to learn all these different cultural habits of this particular market and adapt your product to suit them. So benefit of localization, it's profitable to the business because when the customers are happy, you're making more profits, and then it gives user satisfaction because this time you're giving them a personalized user experience for your growing customer base. This means that how the people in I'm going to give an instance. Yeah, when I arrived in the UK for the first time, I think I told Modia, yeah, my guy. I said like the first cultural shift for me was, the first thing that surprised me was how Google Maps was very, very different from what Google Maps is in Nigeria. I was like, how is Google Maps this? How have I been using Google Maps in Nigeria? It's so different to what I know Google Maps to be, because in the UK here, Google Maps shows you the time that the next bus is coming. It shows you the next bus that you have to enter. It shows you where you have to drop and how many minutes you have to walk before you can get to the next bus and when that next bus is coming. If there is an accident on the way and there's a delay in the bus, it informs you that, okay, there's an accident and this bus is being delayed. So this bus cannot come by so and so time. It was new to me because my experience of Google Maps is just, I'm going from point A to point B. Show me the direction and then I start. I didn't know that Google Maps was able to adapt and give me more details based on what was possible, based on the culture of this place, because we have public buses, we have public trains that takes people from one point to the other. And Google Maps was able to adapt their product to suit the Nigerian market and also adapt their product to suit the UK market. And this was very, very personalized experience in my way. And I was very, very satisfied with the service that I was being offered. So this is, but these are like the benefits of localization. So constraints, it's not going to be fair to talk about benefit and not talk about constraints. Yeah. It's time consuming. You have to understand the market. You have to understand the people. You have to understand their culture. What's, what's how the country operates. The best way to approach, UX writing. How to refine. You have to start, working with, different digital assets. Probably they don't understand what, your they have, a different representation of a wallet in their country, and you have a different representation of wallets in your own country. You have to adapt to all these different things, and this is honestly time consuming. It's also expensive on the technical part and on the human resource part, because it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort to adapt to entire UX and UI to fit a particular market. But again, coming back here, it's very, very rewarding in terms of, business is growing, the customers are satisfied, they're, enjoying a personalized experience. And yeah, at the end of the day, trust me, you're not going to feel like it was much of a duty for you, because you were able to achieve your set goals. Yeah, that's like all I have to say. I timed myself properly. Yeah, 30 minutes. Any questions for me, please? I'm open to taking questions now.
All right. If you have questions or you just want to add something, contribute to what has been said, you can do so now. Just raise your hand and you can speak. And it could also be stuff that stood out for you. Okay. Yeah, do maybe please go on. Unmute yourself.
Hi, Chris. Hi everyone. Thanks a lot for this. Like, this was very enlightening. So I have a question, and the question is, how do you, as a UX designer, convince the business to, commit resources to this, right? Because, say for example, I'm working with a fintech X, and maybe they are launching their app in Ghana or taking the app to Kenya. And then I see that, for example, in Kenya, they have different ways of using fintech services. Like, how should I approach that conversation of convincing them to, localize the product? And second question is, are there ways to sort of phase localization such that maybe we can do this now and then do something else later? I hope my question was clear.
Yeah, 100%. So you have two questions: how to phase the localization process. Sorry, I'm just writing it down.
Yes, that's the second one. First one is, how do I convince the
Yeah, how do you
management
convince the
team?
management? So I'm going to talk from my experience. Yeah, how I've always tackled convincing stakeholders. Um, Now, like you said, if a company is expanding to new markets, they already understand that. They've already done their research from the business perspective to understand how much they are going to be gaining from that particular customer. And trust me, they already know the percentage of the customer, of the market that they want to, get for themselves. I don't know if that makes sense. In my experience, expansion to a different market, a different country, is they already understand the market share that they are trying to get. They already understand the you know the benefit when it comes to, from the business perspective, and other things like that. So I always start the conversation. I can't say, this is like the blueprint, but what I do majorly for, convincing stakeholders is to have a conversation with them. If this is we're already this it's a business decision to move to a different country. Now it's always how do product, how can, design and product fits into this company-wide goal. And the company-wide goal already is to expand to a different market. Now, to expand to different markets, you want to show them how different markets, solve fintech problems. Yeah, you want to. In my case, I love to create presentation slides a whole lot. Trust me. So I always, try to get everybody in the room and create this presentation slide and just walk them through the whole process of this is what we need to do and this is what we need to do. And in most cases, the pushback I always get is around technical constraints. Because when it comes to startups, one day or 1 hour is like 3 months, and they can't allocate resource to all these people. They can't allocate resource to localization just because they want to get a particular market share. Which brings me to your second question, which is phasing the process. Now, the first process for localization, to be honest, is internationalization. That's like the first process to localization, which is internationalization. You want to ensure that the country you're expanding to at least are able to translate your products to their language. Translation and localization. This is like, and internationalization is the first stage of the localization process, where you're able to ensure that the country you're expanding to, at the minimum, they're able to interpret your products in their native language. That's if talking about phasing it and convincing stakeholders, because I believe that these two can go hand in hand. You want to tell them that this is the market you're expanding to, this is the benefits it's going to bring to the business, and this is like how design fits into it. And understand that we have technical constraints, we have time constraints, we have all these things. So to solve for that, I've done my thinking, and this is what I think. I believe that we can't do everything once. So let's start from internationalization. Let's ensure that our products, people within the country are able to translate our product, to their language. And then after that, you want to ensure that you take out offensive, what's it called? The next phase for me is taking out offensive tones and offensive slangs that don't go well with that particular market you're expanding for. That's the next phase, and that's more UX writing and content management. You want to ensure that you are able to, first of all, internationalize your product, whereby the country you're expanding to understand your product and can understand your language. Then the next thing is that you want to be able to take out offensive slangs or languages that don't go well with that particular culture that you're expanding for. So these two phases can stay for a while before you look at improving the UX, the error messages and the other part of the product to adapt to that particular local. I don't know if that makes sense. And coming up with a solution on how you can phase the localization process is going to be like a very, very strong weapon to convince the stakeholders that they need to go into localization to expand into that market that they're looking to expand into, because that's a business decision already. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, you did. Thanks a whole lot.
Thank you.
Or we have a question from Zainab Balogun in the chat. Zainab, would you like to ask your question directly, or should I just read it out for you?
Just read it out. Thank you.
All right, so Zainab's question is, during localization, how do you also account for tourists or English speakers that would like to use the product while in that particular country? Yeah. Did you get that? Chris?
So I'm going to try to see if I can rephrase the question, maybe I understand it. So let's say, for instance, how do I do this? Don't understand this question. During localization, how do you also account for tourists or English speakers that would like to use it? So what's the assumption? Is the assumption here that these tourists are from a different culture, another language entirely?
Yes, actually, let's say something like it's music streaming app, yeah, that you want to introduce into a new culture, and there are other people, other cultures, like let's say English speakers that came there for tourist business, and they also want to be able to use your app. So when you localize it and you change the language into the local people's language, how do you also account for people like English speakers in that country at that particular time that might not understand the language to use your product?
Yeah, so the barrier here is not the product is specific to that market you're building for. The barrier here is not the localization, it's internationalization. And internationalization always comes before localization. So it means that they're able to still translate this product into their language without you necessarily having to account for their culture. I don't know if that makes sense. The major barrier here is the language, from your question, for what I'm understanding. And then I'm also saying that the first stage of localization happens to be internationalization and translation, yeah, where they're able to translate the language from one particular, language to another. And, you have the whole, let's even twist it and say, you are, um, your major language is, Arabic, and then you come to England, you download an application, and then it's in English, and then how do you adapt this music app to your native language from where you're coming from? It's simple. It's already there. You switch your language, it gives you the language of the particular country that that you're comfortable with. But it's not going to, in my experience, it does not directly account for a shift in culture. You're there temporarily. So what you need is pretty much to be able to understand, the text, the the currency and everything else within the particular application. And the product already accounts for that without having to change the whole dynamics of the localization just to suit that particular niche or small user base. Again, why this is not going to be a problem is because internationalization already happens, transition already happens within the application before localization happens. So it means that if language is a barrier for you, it's already solved. What might be a barrier is the culture, the slangs that are different. But in terms of language, that's not going to be a barrier because internationalization already covered for that, and then it should be fine.
Thank you. That makes sense.
Thank you.
Yeah, that actually was a great question. I was able to also learn some more. Do we have any more questions, contributions, comments, and also if you've encountered any apps that have been localized, like you've been in different countries and you saw the difference, like he mentioned Google Maps earlier, so you could also mention them in the chat. Okay, so we have, is this Tosho? Hi, please tell us your name. How do you say your name?
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah. My name is Tosho Ajibade. Yeah. And in terms of the last question, if there are apps that are localized, just earlier this week I saw like Stripe is heavily localized. So if you check stripe.com/JP, it's going to show you the Japanese version. But if you check stripe.com/US, it's going to like show you the US version. And another amazing thing I discovered on the platform is the icons, because the icons there is a place under the main hero where they show you suggested companies that are already using Stripe. And I discovered that those companies also change depending on your location. So if you are in Japan, they will show you companies that are using Stripe in Japan. If you are in Europe, they will show you companies that are using Stripe in Europe. So I think that's like an interesting thing to mention. And the other thing is that I came here late, so I'm wondering if this presentation can be publicly available after this after the whole thing. Thank you, Chris, for putting things together. I've really learned a lot in the short time I've spent here.
Yeah, thank you. Just to add to what Tosho said, yeah. Like if you're in the UK here, once you type in Amazon, it takes you directly to amazon.co.uk. Like it does not even take you to amazon.com, irrespective of where you're coming from. Once your country is identified by the browser, it directly takes you to amazon.co.uk. If you are on Glassdoor, if you're on Indeed, it directly takes you to indeed.com, and the extension is to that particular country that you are in. And like that's the experience for me. Even if you go to even CarryFirst, I don't know if anybody knows of CarryFirst. If you go to CarryFirst, if you switch the country, it takes there's particular products that are not available to other country, and it's not, I won't say it's heavily localized, but at least to some particular degree, the service that they are offering has been localized, and then that's also another level of localization where you're able to localize the service that you are providing to suit the markets that you are providing that for. Yeah, thanks, Tosho, for that. I'm going to also make sure that the slides are available. Yeah.
I was trying to recall another example. And I don't know if it's Burger King or so, but like when you arrive on the site, like if you check the Asian ones, like it's significantly different. Like it feels like you're in a totally different place because they're actually kind of really localized it to their cultures. Yeah, I don't know if it's Burger King, but I'm actually trying to check now. Shay Ayodele says, I think internalization can be used to gain traction for the business before the business fully localize their business. They tend to see how people use their product through internalization. Okay? I think that's interesting. Thank you for sharing. Amide says, when you talk about creating, I think it's the question, When you talk about creating personalized experience, what does this mean for you as a UX designer? And also, does this mean that you will build different apps for the different markets? Chris?
Uh, yeah. So when it comes to UI and UX, what does this mean in terms of localization? It means that, like from the examples we've given, when it comes to user flows, it's different. Like in my experience, it's like a very, very different experience when you're I, s- I don't know, but I still talk about Google Maps. I can even talk about normal my iPhone. My iPhone is also very, very different. Like if I double click on my power button, I'm able to see my card, add more cards, my wallet, and pay for anything I want to pay just by tapping. Back in Nigeria, that this did not happen for me. Like like it was not the experience for me back then because I don't have this particular feature or product was not specific to that particular market. So in my experience and from what I've interacted with and done and seen also is that the UX is very different. To some degree, the UI is also very different. The colors is different. I know like pretty much here are like red. If they ask somebody now if red is danger, we're going to say red is danger. Yeah, I don't know if that am I correct? Am I correct? Hello, can you hear me? Anybody? Like in our
Yes, yes,
culture,
you're correct.
in
Yes.
Nigeria, yeah, in Nigeria here, when you make use of the color red, it means danger. It means stop or stuff like that. But in China, red is like a very, very peaceful color. It symbolizes, peace, joy, happiness. Who would have thought? Man, like the first day I learned about that, it changed my entire perspective of even, color psychology entirely. So in my experience, the UI, the UX is affected by the culture, by what that particular market accepts. Your user flows is different. Your UI is changed. The icons are different. Some icons are not recognized in some particular. It's like part of the UX principle. Recall and recall and that is recall or remember. So like icons are different, symbolizes different things within different cultures. I don't want to have an icon being misrepresented in a particular country. So the UI changes, the UX changes to suit what that particular. That's why initially I said that I talked about researching not just the people, but also researching the culture. What does the culture permit? This affects your entire UI UX because as UX designers, we also deal with people, emotional intelligence and culture, and this changes over time and with the product we are building for. Yeah, I don't know if that was able to answer your question, but yes, the UI changes to adapt to the culture for that country accepts. If I'm building a joyful brand and in Nigeria my color is green, when I go to if I'm expanding to China, it is very, very essential for me to switch my color from green to red because in China, what symbolizes joy for them is red. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that it does. I think it does. Olamide says, thank you for that explanation. Yes, you answered my question. Awesome. Yeah, I also said like I found what I was looking for. So the Burger King, they actually even changed the name to Hungry Jacks in Australia. I guess that's an example of localization. Like it almost feels like a different brand. I don't know why, but I think that's a cool example. Hakim
Yeah.
Olashko says Kuda does that also, though they are not currently available in the UK. Okay. Victory is asking. I think this question is similar to what maybe asked. Victory says, how do you advocate localization among stakeholders in business growth, product, and especially engineering teams as a designer?
Yeah, I answered the question, but I'm going to just summarize my answer. So, localization is not a product decision, it's a business decision. So, once the business already decided to expand to a particular market, they've given you the first step to advocate for localization. Now, the next step is for you as a designer to sit back and look at in my experience and how I've been working is that the business set their goal, then the product team needs to tie their goal into the business goal, and then the design team needs to fall into the product team goal that achieves the business goal. Now, how this works is that you are able to identify how design comes into this localization, and then in my experience, from what I do is that I prepare slides presentation and I try to get everybody in one room and explain to them that this is what the culture. Say we're building a fintech app like was asked before. This is how fintech apps are being built in this particular country, and this is how it is different from how we have approached the problem, of how approach the problem in a particular country. Now, show them the disparity between the two cultures, and then the next thing you want to do is that you want to also like the first question that was asked, in terms of facing the localization process. You want to also face the localization process and tell them that you understand that from the engineering perspective, it takes human resource. From the product perspective, it takes it takes a whole lot of time. So what you've done on your own is to help them break down the localization into smaller chunks. So the first thing you want to do is you want to ensure that translation happens within the application. Then the next thing you want to do is then you highlight everything else you want to do. In my experience, once you've shown them a breakdown of how this thing can fit into all the whole things, they always say yes. I've not, maybe my experience is very different, but I've not really, heard a no, because I always ensure that when I'm going there, I'm looking from, I'm not just empathizing for the users, I'm also empathizing for my colleagues, for my teammates, and ensuring that I'm, factoring everybody's, input and saying, okay, we're not going to do everything at once. We're going to break this down into smaller chunks. We're going to attack it from this point, from this point, from this point, and this is how long it should take us. And drop of water makes an ocean. That's how I've always gone about it, and I think that can help you too.
All right, thank you. Amide has his hands up. Yeah. Please go on, unmute yourself and ask your question.
Right, thank you very much. Thank you. So my question is, in a situation whereby probably you have to like localize in a country, for example, where their culture is complex or very, very different from the design team, what the design team understands or has experienced. Is it always enough, or is it always easy to just research the market and research the people and research the culture? Like how easy is it going to be, and what do you recommend in that situation? For example, a team of just like 4 designers in a startup, and they're in Nigeria here, and they are trying to, probably they've internationalized and they want to localize probably in Kenya. What do you recommend for such a company to do? Should they bring in another designer that is more conversant with the culture there, or they just research?
So I'm going to start from this point. So I'm going to say that I'm quite suspicious. A startup in Nigeria with 4 designers. Wow, bro, you are lucky. Okay. That's the first point. In my experience, what most companies do is that they hire designers. They say, we're expanding to Kenya, so we need designers. We need a designer in Kenya because the designer in Kenya understands the culture of Kenyans, and they want to build a product for Kenyans. Like that's one solution that most companies, one route that most companies take, that I've also already experienced in the past, where they're like, we're expanding to so and so country, but we need a designer within that country that understands the culture of the people there and have built a successful product for the people in that country to expand, what we're building. That's what I've learned. That's what I know, in the past. But in case where you don't have, because again it's a startup, so you might not have the entire funds to account to cater for a new designer. It's a whole lot of research, countless painful hours of researching, the people, understanding, doing so much, competitor analysis, competitor survey, and understanding, how the people, similar products, their major color, their assets, taking account of all these things, taking stock of all these things, and understanding, how individual piece makes up the entire product, and how your product is lacking in regard to the UX and UI of successful products or successful similar products within that market. So I've said two things. What most companies do is that institutions like this, they hire a designer within, the country that they're looking to expand into, and then that solves the problem for them. In most cases, they don't have enough funds to do that, so it's down to the, like you said, 4 designers within the startup to spend, number of hours to understand. The approach is pretty much understanding the current players in the market. The current players in the market, take stock of, their UI, take stock of their UX, understand, how they, how their brand tone, understand, their language, understand, their primary colors and how that ties into the culture of the people. If you research, colors by culture, it gives a solid foundation on how people within different countries make use of color and how that affects, how that affects them or speaks to them. So these are like, research. You want to research successful products within that market. Take stock of their UI, take stock of their UX to see how they are solving the problem, and compare that with what you are solving for your own market, and see, where you have loopholes, and try to fix that before expanding to that country, if you have the time to do that.
All right, thank you very much.
Did that answer your question? If I didn't answer your question, you can let me know. I'll start fresh. I'll come again from a different perspective.
Yeah, I think it answers the question.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any more questions for me?
Okay, there's a question. Olamide asked another question. During your research to understand the culture, what methods of research are most suitable? And are the research methods flexible or restricted to a particular method?
Yeah, this is a very, very interesting one. Research methods are flexible. Yeah, there's some research that you can't do because you might not be physically present in that country. I was working on the product the last time. I wanted to expand, to Ghana and Kenya, and then the C-suite executives, they all flew down to the country to speak to players, similar players in the industry, to understand how they are building. They're able to do that. They're able to speak to other C-suite executives to understand the players in that country. I, as the designer, I was not involved in that process, and I'm still expected to cater for that particular market. So for my research phase, what I did was these are interviews. I recruited people from the country. I spoke to people from the country. But it was favor was on my side. There was language was not a barrier, and I was able to speak to them. But it was pretty much me conversing with these customers and understanding what works for them. How they're also encountering similar products. And then something else that you can do is also what's it called, contextual inquiry. Yeah, you want to be able to just sit down with them and let them walk you through the experience. In many cases, what I do is that I speak to users directly, just ask them similar questions about similar players in the market. And in other cases, I also want to just sit down with them, ask for their permission to record their screen and let them walk me through a similar product in the market. I want to see how they react to interactions. I want to see how they react to buttons. I want to see how they react to flows. I want to see how they react to all these individual things. And then I want to pick all these things up and compare them with my product and see where I'm failing and how I'm succeeding and how to adapt my product to that market. So in my experience, what I've done is speaking to users just directly, interviewing them, and then just the contextual inquiry to understand how they interact with the product and see it firsthand. Also monitor their face to see if they're excited, if they're not excited, if a particular interaction. There's some particular interactions that you do in probably Nigeria, and it's so people are not excited by it. And in a different culture, like here in the UK, people are excited by it, or in the US, people are excited by it. So you want to understand, how interaction goes well with them, how how they're excited by by messaging. If they see an error message, does it affect them? Are they happy with it? Are they happy with the language? Are they happy with the tone? These are like the things you want to understand from contextual inquiry. And then and just speaking to users directly is to just understand their perspective of how people who are solving the problem is solving it for them and how they think it can be improved to better suit them, their way of life and everything else. So these two methods worked for me. I believe it can work for you. Amen. Am I preaching now?
Right. Olamide, what was that? Did that satisfy your question? Okay. Okay. Did John asked a question? John, do you want to still ask your question? Like directly?
Yeah.
Okay, go on, please.
Okay, thank you. So my question was, because right now I'm actually going through this phase currently in my company. Yeah, kind of like starting that. So like I actually need like proper guidance on how to. So my question is actually that at what stage is the product designer involved? What stage do I come into this context? And I think you mentioned these major stakeholders already, but I think my network was having issues then. So at what stage do I come in as a product designer, and what are my major roles to ensure that the company, the business is properly localized in that particular country? That's my question.
So the moment the company says we're expanding to, let's say, Kenya. You see that moment that they send that memo. The next thing is to go to a product lead and ask them, how does design fit into this plan? That's always what I do. The moment there's like this, there's this like overall meeting, that's saying we're expanding to a new market, want to explore, The next question is always, how does design fit into this plan? And that's where you come in. You want to make them get your value from that point on and make them understand that although the business might have already understands the legal and compliance part of adapting to that particular market, it needs to adapt its product to that market, because legal and compliance is just going to save them from problem. Without adapting their product, they're not going to get money. And in many cases, for what I've seen also, is that most markets that many Nigerian startups migrate into are not very different from the Nigerian market in terms of language barrier, in terms of culture difference. They are not very, very different. I don't know if I'm the only one who has seen it, but if you're expanding to Ghana, if you're expanding to Kenya, the cultural difference is not so huge. The language barrier is not so huge. So it's like can still work. And most of it, they feel like we have done internationalization, which means that if there's any local language in that country, they're able to understand it. But again, design comes in from the point where there's a message, or there's a circular, or there's a meeting that says we're expanding to a particular country. The first thing is to ask your product lead, how does design tie into this? And then trust me, they're going to give you a breakdown of what the company is thinking and how they want to get into that market. And then your next question is going to be, but this is how we're solving the problem. And this is how people in this country are solving the problem. Now, for us to make profit, this is how I believe that design can approach making our product useful for these people in this country. And then you are not just asking questions maybe out of spite. Now you're asking questions based on the fact that you're bringing ideas and solutions to the table. And then from my experience all the time, they always add it to the table, and then you have much better say from the experience. So it's always from the point of the business saying we want to expand. Then the next step for you is to ask your product lead, how does design tie into this? And then after that, the next thing for you to do is to go and do your research and understand how players in the industry are solving it, and then probably come up with a slide or documentation to show that this is what design needs to do to help the business achieve success in this particular market. And you would like to get a go ahead in terms of how design should work. That's going to work for you. Cheat code. If it does not work, come on, flood me. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, okay, thank you. But for the market research, do I have to travel there, or I can just carry out secondary research?
You can carry out your desk research from Nigeria, from anywhere you are. You don't have to,
Okay.
except the company is going to pay. If the company is going to pay, definitely you want to, go there by yourself. But if they can't, most companies can't afford it. So you just have to, sit on your laptop and get people within that market. They love digging, you love, scrapping, and get the data that you need to back whatever you want to do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you have any more questions or comments, this is your time. This is already like 2 minutes past 9. I think we did quite well with time. At this point, please, I want to beg again. We have a feedback form, so please just take out like 1 minute max, honestly. Okay, maybe not 1 minute, it could be more for you, depending on how much feedback you want to leave. But please help us know what we can do better, what we did well for this session, and to help us with future sessions. Thank you, Chris. Thank you so much. Like, this has been really insightful. Honestly, I hadn't really even thought about localization and all of those things. And this is just opening my eyes to see stuff like this. I think it's pretty important, especially if people are targeting, like, okay, you know what, working at foreign jobs and all of that. You really have to understand those other cultures and their context as well. I think that's something that everyone should begin to think about.
Yeah. Gifts. Globalization, internationalization, localization, and translation. Yep. And you'll be fine.
All right. Yeah, so we also have our social media channels at Ashakoteri everywhere. And then we have a YouTube channel where we upload our sessions. Currently, we have a lot of videos we've not yet uploaded, but we're going to be uploading them like gradually. And if you're following our social media, we're going to announce it when we do post them online. So please follow us everywhere. Yeah, and if whatever you learned, like, you can really just tag us on Twitter, tag DevChris, Dev_KHRIS, and Ashakoteri on Twitter. So yeah, that's pretty much it. If you have any more comments, any questions, you can ask them now. But if you do not, we have officially come to the end of this session. Thank you so much, Chris. That was amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Yeah, please. Thank you. Thank you, David Fireme, my boy.